This is Crypto, and this is my advanced crypto guide for Apex Legends. Instead of throwing a bunch of tips at you like usual, I'll take a different approach. I'll be finding the answers to big questions and problems about crypto, his playstyle, and their kit. These are the questions we'll be covering. How do we keep our drone alive? How do we stop players from shooting it down? How do we time the EMP better? How do we keep ourselves safe whilst using the drone? Crypto has no mobility. What can we do about that? Can crypto be played solo? Can crypto be a good pick for ranked? How can we counter crypto? And then a summary. So let's start. The drone gets shot down easily, right? Well, we have to use some good skills to keep it alive. Firstly, contrary to what you'd think, sometimes it's better to keep it low down to the ground. Why? Well, it's easier to dodge left and right at speed than it is to dodge all over the place in the air. On top of that, you can dodge in and out of cover and break line of sight. This method is far better for scouting than putting it up in the air. Putting your drone up in the air can be good for getting a quick look at what's going on in an area, but actually you're at a disadvantage here. Not only does your drone beam a big red light and make a ton of noise, making it an easy target, but because you're higher off the ground, the distance you can effectively ping enemies is reduced. Remember, you get a 30-meter ping distance, and some people are flying their drones 15 to 20 meters in the air. Obviously, there are times where this works, but a lot of the time, if you want to scan or EMP, sticking close to the ground is better. So stay low, dodge in and out of cover, and peek corners to get scans on players. We can use the typical dodging and weaving we're used to in shooter games too, but don't use the movement inputs though. Instead, just use the forward key or press forward on the joystick that controls your movement, and then move your aim left and right to dodge. If you are stuck in the air, you can still use some quick turns to bamboozle opponents. It can work a little, but it's not perfect, just a little thing to practice and get good at. Next, let's talk about using the EMP. So there's a big problem. As you're charging up the EMP, all a player needs to do is shoot your drone once and the EMP is cancelled. So you really need to get good at going in and out of cover. Thankfully, that's quite easy if you stay low to the ground instead of sending it out in the air above head. Once again, stay low. You can also use your EMP behind walls so that you're within range. It goes through walls, so take advantage of that instead of throwing your drone in a building or room when you really don't need to. You should also make it so you start your EMP much closer to the enemies, so they're taken aback. We'll talk more about that next. Also, let's touch on the recalling feature quickly first. It can be a great way to keep your drone alive and keep the cooldown up. Instead of leaving your drone out, consider recalling it. It's free to do, doesn't have a cooldown, and most importantly, once it's recalled, you can send out your drone again immediately. The best way to do this is to hide your drone behind cover, exit the drone, and then press the recall button. You gain access to crypto and can move him this way. If you stay in the drone and press recall, you have to stay still on both the drone and crypto. There's literally no reason not to back out first. What's great about the recall feature is that you can scout an area, ping enemies, and then hide it behind a corner, exit it, then recall as you push closer. You can get really good at scouting buildings, then recalling to keep your drone alive. If you've been playing crypto, you'll have noticed something about the EMP. If you activate when you're too far away, players heal up before you can even get close. If you activate it when you're too close, you risk damaging yourself and stunning you and your teammates. So what can we do? Well, I found the best thing to do is to scout an area first at a bit of a distance, say 50 to 100 meters, locate the players, then recall the drone like I mentioned a minute ago. Next, you push close enough so you're in an engagement distance, we're talking about 25 meters here. Then you send out your drone, push it in a hiding spot near the enemies, exit your drone immediately, and then EMP. You'll see the radius of the EMP. You should be on the very edge of that radius when the EMP goes off, so that when it does go off, you can push immediately. If you're not on the edge of that radius, you're losing out on time and giving more time for the enemy to prepare. Ultimately, this is something we will get more into a bit later, but you need good teammates to be as effective as possible. That way they can have your back. If you don't have teammates you can effectively communicate with, then you're going to have to get your own back. Remember, you can always see yourself on the drone, so pay attention to crypto's surroundings as you're using the drone. Really though, you should just not try to be on your drone for too long. Every time you enter your drone, there should be a purpose. Are you scouting out for players? Are you trying to set up a flank? Or are you just on your drone because you feel like you should be using your abilities? If it's the latter, you should probably rethink. Be quick on your drone, have a purpose, complete that purpose, then leave it so you're not standing vulnerable and you're not leaving your team in a potential 2v3. And remember, always double check banners first. They can tell you if there are enemies in a 200-meter distance. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't enemies in an area. For example, in big places like Capital City, the city is larger than 200 meters, so you need to get right in the center before you look at the banner. It also doesn't seem to be perfect. I think you need to exit the drone and re-enter to see any updates to the squad count. It isn't updated live, I don't think. So let's talk about Crypto's mobility. You don't have any mobility skills, which is a big problem on World's Edge. This means you need to think one step ahead. Essentially, that means you need to be the person that engages on a fight. You have your drone for scouting out players, and you have your ultimate for initiating fights, so it's a little easier to be the one that engages than it is in other legends. So scout out areas, understand how many squads are in an area, and then push on that with your ultimate. If you mess up your ultimate, or your drone gets destroyed, or you get caught off guard, you need to reposition immediately, wait for your drone to recharge so you can try again with the EMP, or wait for a third party and then push back in. If you stay about, there's no get out of jail free card. You have no grapple, no jump pad, or even a dome shield to give you those extra few seconds of free time. You can hold down your tactical button and get your drone out and immediately go back into Crypto's point of view. You won't stop moving when you do this, which may buy you a split second of distraction time, but that's pretty much it. So instead with Crypto, you're forced to think ahead a little more, play carefully, scout ahead, and always retreat and reflank with your EMP or as a third party when things get hot. Don't like that playstyle? Well, then Crypto isn't going to do so well for you. Sure, you can pull it off if you have good aim and base movement skills, but you'd do so much better with another legend. Speaking of movement skills, let's look at some you can learn to overlook the mobility problem Crypto has. The great thing about Apex Legends is that a player with good movement can potentially pull off any legend without even touching their abilities. So the first one is bunny hopping. I made a great guide about that a long time ago, and it's still relevant today. We also have cut strafing, which is a way to make your hitbox very hard to hit whilst you're reloading or moving side to side. We also have wall jumping and general movement in combat. I have 4 videos in the description, 3 are from me and 1 is from Moki Sniper. I would highly suggest you go watch those if you want to learn how to be better at movement. Finally, let's talk about using the drone as a distraction for pushing. Even if you don't have your EMP, you can send your drone in when you're right next to unaware enemies and push it to distract them. They'll of course be trying to shoot it down, and at that point you can push up closer to try to get them whilst they're distracted. Most of the time this kind of tactic will only buy you a split second of time to push, but sometimes that's all you need. Well, yes, but actually no. Being a good solo legend means you need to be able to deal with 1v2s and 1v3s more effectively, because you can't rely on your teammates. So you could get really good at pulling off your EMP and getting clean triple kills, and that's probably where Crypto's value comes into play. And you can get good at third partying because you have knowledge through the drone, so in a way Crypto can be a good solo legend, but you need to get good at a different set of skills. You need to be good at timing your ultimate and being passive and patient when it's not up. That's not really something that's so fun when you have legends like Pathfinder, Wraith and Octane. So yeah, Crypto could be effective solo, but it may not be that fun unless you're some kind of EMP master. In summary, I don't think most people will enjoy playing Crypto solo or be that effective at playing Crypto solo. Absolutely, this is where Crypto has the most value. You can provide so much intel for your team and set up very powerful pushes with the EMP. Crypto fits so comfortably in the current ranked meta thanks to the power of the EMP. Remember, it disables traps too. A well hidden drone can also provide so much intel for your team in the late game rings too, which is so useful for when there's dozens of players left in a tiny play area. It's simple, Crypto will be very good for ranked. Finally, let's look at how we can counter Crypto. There are some really effective counters. First, if you're Wraith, you can just void out of an EMP if you need to. That's one great counter. Second, if you're Pathfinder and get stunned, you can grapple and get your normal momentum whilst you wait for the stun to disappear. That's another great counter. You can also drop your armor on the ground so the shield damage doesn't apply to you. It's hard to master, but it's effective. Finally, the best way to counter Crypto is to simply shoot his drone. Get good at shooting it from the sky and always prioritize shooting it down when you see the EMP animation. Remember, you have some time before the EMP fully charges up, so shoot it down whilst you still can. Also, you can grapple on the drone and put Gibraltar's dome shield on the drone and get a moving dome shield. So yeah, there's some pretty ridiculous scenarios for anyone that has some friends to kind of mess around with. So that's my crypto guide. I hope that this has been useful. Let me know what you think of this guide and whether you have any of your own tips. I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!